Greetings and salutations, all you beautiful people. We back. It's League Eric and Mark for some global power rankings today. It might be the last one we do in spring before MSI. Hard to say because it's hard to actually change the rankings when more than half the teams are done playing for spring because they're eliminated.
At a certain point, there's no purpose in really updating the power rankings. Obviously still important when we're looking at an event like MSI and where these teams should be ranking and where your expectations for them should be. But yep, savor it while it lasts, guys. This is the last hurrah of the power rankings, last hurrah of the spring playoffs. And of course, that means we get some wild shifts in the power rankings.
Yeah, and it's way more fun to do MSI rankings across the board, whether it's team or players. But yes, with best of fives, mostly between teams in the top 20 this week, there are some monumental shifts from 20 to 1. And we got to start with the teams that are ousted. IG's incredibly quick exit from playoffs, basically before it even started, gets them out of the top 20. And Schalke's impressive weekend, and even going back last week to G2, nets them that final spot in the top 20.
IG does the perfect IG, shoreline salute, just waves at the crowd, says, hey, nice to be here in the top 20. And then the Shy turns the car drastically around to get out of here. This is not the territory for IG, but it is absolutely the spot where you can find a team like Schalke and what they've proven to the LEC crew and the LEC faithful, what they've been able to do as far as upsets and put it back together. This is more so the Schalke that we had been hyping up, talking about in the earlier weeks of the LEC spring split.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think anyone saw them performing this well in playoffs against good teams in G2, Rogue, and Fnatic, showing up against all three of them. So Schalke definitely deserving of being on this list. Maybe, well, the final time we're seeing them in spring at the very least. Team Liquid, we had the head-to-head between Cloud9. We talked about it leading up to this. There would be big moves. With them losing and it not being nearly as close a series as we thought, they're down 2 spots.
Yeah, they get knocked down in this type of situation, still holding on strong inside the top 20. I think that's important to recognize and give credit for Team Liquid and what they have, and realizing that, yes, you got to be knocked down due to the performance and, not exactly stacking up as well as we would have liked or being as competitive as we wanted to see against Cloud9 in that marquee matchup. But certainly not enough things to take away from this team that would bump them out of it. When you're looking at the positives, Alphari still is outperforming, the other laner, quite drastically at times. You have the bottom lane duo, Tactical, being a little bit more stable than we have seen at certain points during this split alongside Core JJ. Now we would need to see improvements, specifically speaking. Well, number one, the mid lane matchup against someone like Perks, where, if you want to keep climbing in this power rankings, you need to be able to deal with people with power like that. Team Liquid and Jensen fail that test right away in these playoffs. And then the other one for me is specifically nitpicking on someone like Santorin. I feel like that plays in partly to the mid lane as well, but still could have found a little bit more. And, you feel wanting more from someone with his skill set and has been able to help out Team Liquid the way he has been this split.
Still got faith in TL bouncing back in their matchup against TSM this weekend. Ahead of them, though, are the 2 minor region squads. We're talking GAM eSports and PSG Talent. They both get bumped up a spot. GAM went 2-0 in their final week of the regular season to improve to 13-1, 26-6 overall. And the playoffs started over in the PCS, where you had PSG Talent quick 3-0 of J-Team to move on to the next round.
And I think really when we talk about these teams, try to make people be aware of what's going on and the power that can be had with these 2 squads, specifically speaking, is trying to make you be convinced that when we head towards MSI and you see these names in the groups, you see these names up against the team that you're rooting for, to not overlook them and to not, realize that there are strengths and positives for both of these teams and what they can do. Unfortunately, I think for some people in the community, absolutely, it's going to fall on deaf ears because of the way that we have talked about these regions and teams and try to bring excitement, attention towards these things. And sometimes it has completely fizzled out, right? These 2 teams, what we've seen from them, I feel more than confident enough to say that you should be taking that risk to believe in them, to see that they are going to be at least something more than just an ant to step on.
All it takes is looking at the last two major international events, last year's Worlds, now 2 years ago, MSI. These regions aren't a joke, guys. We've been seeing Vietnam compete on the international stage for years now. A lot of the time it is Levi or some star player from Vietnam that's been stepping up. And since the PCS or LMS was rebranded, we saw a lot of this version of PSG talent at Worlds make some serious noise with tons of visa issues. So yeah, they're going to make some statement wins at MSI 2021. No doubts about that. Then we have a trio here of Hanwha, Rare Atom, and World Elite, who all varying degrees, I don't want to say playoff disappointment, but kind of ending their runs where you expected them to.
Right. Just running out of runway is how it feels like for a lot of these teams that are trying to prove themselves to get into that territory of a top level, an elite team that we talk about, and the confidence that you have in them, and how that, they can have some resilience in our power rankings, right? Where they can have a bit of a slip, a bit of a mistake or underperformance, and you can kind of slow down their descent. These squads right here in this grouping, as we've seen, and what our expectations were for them and how you wanted them to hopefully exceed those expectations, falling short in the playoffs, and definitely the varying degrees of it. I would say, I think overall the flame out for a squad like Hanwha Life maybe to me is a little bit more disappointing than looking at a team like Rare Atoms fall out of the playoffs. But certainly all of them lumped into that category of just not enough.
Yeah, Rare Atom definitely the best end to this because they had the win against IG. They had some positives. World Elite, for me, you expected more than what we got for them out of Suning. That was supposed to at least be a competitive series. They're the higher seed coming into that, and they get 3-0 slammed by Suning. So that's why they have the biggest drop of those three squads. Then you get to Rogue and Mad Lions, and Mad are obviously the teams to talk about this week because you talk about the meddling three that we just talked about. Team Liquid loses, Rogue wins, but don't show anything new against Schalke, and Mad Lions have the biggest climb we've had, since week 1 or 2 in the global power rankings. And that's not only because they beat G2, but they did it in pretty dominant fashion.
And this was coming. I don't know. This should be no surprise to a lot of people in the way that you had seen Mad Lions playing and what they had been doing. The shark fin was out of the water, and we've had the shark attack, my man. That shark attack taking down the squads in the LEC, Mad Lions, Humanoid, everybody getting the job done. We talked about it heading into the weekend that we looked at that top side for them. Big power, obviously. Humanoid, Umanoid, this is fantastic. Talking about Karzi and Kaiser down in the bottom lane, all the kills that they're getting, great. But we put the spotlight on Arma and Elyoya, the two new additions, and how they've been able to play, how they integrate with the rest of the team. Man, they get the double thumbs up from me on what's going on.
Yeah, and 6-2 start to playoffs against the top two teams in Europe in Rogue and G2. I don't know what more you can do. Of course, you're going to be climbing, soaring even through the power rankings. And they're playing at a level that we didn't see at all in the regular season. It's what we wanted to see more of 2020 Mad Lions. We didn't see it at all in the regular split, but now they're showing up big in the playoffs, but not quite big enough to get higher than the top dogs in North America. And the series wasn't close against Team Liquid, so we dropped TL. It wasn't close because Cloud9 was popping off, which is why they also have a big climb, not as big as Mad Lions, but 11th is the highest we've had them in the spring split. And if they win in dominant fashion, or just really in any fashion in the finals, they could be sniffing top 10, Mark.
The scary thing about Cloud9 and where we've had them and how we've been talking about them all year is this has been them not performing at optimal levels. We're getting pretty close to optimal Cloud9 at the very least, or at the optimal level of Cloud9 with this roster, understanding that there is going to be growth, there's going to be some ups, there's going to be some downs as well in certain areas, but certainly feeling the ups for Cloud9 right now, and big part of that has got to be the big money man in the mid lane, Mr. Perks, delivering on the performances that we've talked about him the last couple of years that he's able to deliver, that lane dominance. Finally, it wasn't Perks in the mid lane for Cloud9 this past weekend. It was Luca the Bazooka in the mid lane for Cloud9.
And I'm maybe talking about this squad at 85% capacity, what we're seeing, because you look at that series against Team Liquid, and it's like Blabber was there, but he wasn't the standout performer.
He can be better. He can be better.
That you're accustomed to seeing out of Blabber, who's been MVP of the league. So if you get all these guys playing at their highest level in the same series, then you're definitely talking about a top 10 team.
Yeah, and when you look at Cloud9 and how they can match up against squads internationally, there shouldn't be any type of reasoning to say that you'd be, getting knocked down outside of some of the heaviest heavyweights that you could have at an international event. So with someone like Perks in your mid lanes, Ven and Vulcan, I want to stress the and, because Vulcan's play is making it so that you got to be mentioning both of them.
The fudge thing, yeah.
And I got to say, Blabber can be just like the best junglers that we see in the world and the tempo that they can put out. But you're absolutely right. The fudge is going to be a thing to work on.
Yeah, maybe we get shades of Bwipo at 2018 MSI, where everyone was expecting him to get slam dunked by guys like Khan, and he showed up, and obviously Bwipo ended up becoming a world-class top laner. Not saying Fudge is going to get there, but there's a chance, maybe the expectations are still there for him. Now we slide into that top 10, which again, Cloud9 is just shy of, and we've got a combo of some teams climbing up and some big slumps. Really the only climb or the top and bottom of this, but number 10 is Suning, and coming into their matchup, they played against Top Esports most recently, which was it was a series that we'll dive a little deeper into because we haven't talked about that one yet. But before that, they had the 6-0 record against LNG and against World Elite. That alone is going to be enough for them to climb. And the TES series, it was fully in control of Top Esports, and that's the main reason why Suning isn't climbing higher. But they definitely deserve top 10 for what they did in playoffs.
Right. Simply the result against Top Esports is what stops a squad like Suning from making a climb the likes of the Mad Lions are having. That type of situation is what we're dealing with them and how you look at it, because you're right. Going through the playoffs, having that 6-0 record, making your way through, cleaning out teams, that's very impressive from what they were able to do, and already being on the radar, being on that top 20 list. Absolutely going to push them in that territory. And even in the Top Esports series, finding ways to get their own fights.
Now, I mean, the first two games, they get a Baron stolen from them. That kind of swings the momentum in game one. Game two, they had no business winning. TES decides, you know what? Instead of ending the game, let's chase Bin under some turrets and get aced. Oh, we lost the game. So this could have easily been a 3-0 for TES.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the recognitions, and there's no shame in it, type of situation for a squad like Suning. And like we've talked about them, this wasn't going to be Suning fading away after losing Sword Art and what they did last year. This was still more than enough positives to continue the growth, find your way. But you'd have to, find your own way, right? Because losing Sword Art is not going to be an easy task nonetheless. The squad here for Suning has absolutely done that, found their own momentum and identity, at least in this split. And moving forward into summer, they've got a lot of positives to build off of, just outside of that, top four of the elites that we have of the LPL.
Then we have the pair of, you want to call them upsets, you want to call them disappointments. We've got G2 and T1. Obviously, you had to slide them both, dial them back a bit this week. G2 is the one who ends up falling more with 3 spots, but they're still ahead of T1 because they were inside that top 5 before. I still think both of these teams are obviously world's caliber squads, but because, listen, best of 5s in playoffs when you don't show up. G2 at least has a shot at redemption. T1, spring's over.
Yeah, and this is the realization, I think, for a lot of people, when you have enough time away from these losses, from these series, a little bit more distance, you can look back at them and realize that yes, the majority, the percentage of the share of the blame, responsibility for these losses, for falling down, has to be on these squads, but still a considerable amount needs to be given to who their opponents were, right? What they did on the day differently,
and they've climbed
to make sure that they
substantially because of that, both of them.
Exactly, and I think that's where we need to realize why you're not seeing any more of a drastic fall from G2 or T1. There's no reason to be, overreactionary and put them down just because of those disappointments. I think this is absolutely where they belong. For a squad like T1, as you said, this is it. This is the end of spring. You got to come back in summer for some more retooling. G2 still has the chance to improve upon their spring, let alone a chance to book a ticket for MSI.
Yeah, and like we've said before, third split in a row they've gone through losers, and last 2 times they they won the title, guys. So yeah, I'm not counting out G2 yet. And T1, at least they got some points when it comes to Worlds. They're hoping that 4 LCK teams will be representing at Worlds again, as they missed out on that last year. Then we get to 6 and 7, which are, the direct head-to-head. And FPX is the big climb within the top 10. A lot of that, obviously, they had the Rare Atom series, fresh off the IG upset. They look good there. But the real reason they climb up 3 spots is that head-to-head against JDG. It was a very close series, and that's why we're only knocking JDG down 1 spot.
Yeah, the JDG absolutely does not deserve to be really penalized severely for that loss to FPX, considering how close it was, considering all the momentum going into it. I'm happy with these rankings and where they are. And for FPX moving forward, should be very happy with what you're seeing from the members of this team. Yes, the 4 members that have been there pretty much all year, we can talk about them and have talked about them. But again, the spotlight needs to be on someone like Tien. He has absolutely stepped back into this role and delivered back to the level of performance that he was when they were winning Worlds. And that is not to say that to put back on that type of expectation and that's it. Hey, Tien is winning Worlds or nothing type. No. But that is the level of play and respect that you need to be viewing this FPX roster with, let alone maybe an extra dash of being respectful and scared to them, knowing what Nuggery can bring to this team. And you better believe I'm counting on him getting a buff, seeing that world skin, getting that one released to the public, seeing how good that cannon looks.
All of a sudden,
he's going to be feeling it.
Yeah, a lot more of the electric mouse in the top lane for Nuggery all of a sudden, starting to spam that. But you talk about that series in particular, FPX versus JDG, and it was high quality. Both teams, you look a little scary seeing them. To speak to how insane the LPL is, I feel like if you just stopped these power rankings here in 10-6 and said FPX or JDG, one of them is going to MSI for the LPL. Those are your top 2 teams. You'd be like, yeah, pretty strong region. They look good. But there's still a whole top 5.
That's why I'm saying it is an absolute nightmare situation for the rest of the world that we could be getting an extra berth for the LPL for Worlds. And when I'm talking about an extra berth for the LPL, this isn't just, all right, step on up. We'll send our next best. We're talking again. This is the Elite 4 that we've now got in the playoffs. And even outside of that Elite 4, man, you've got some really scary teams.
Yeah, and you saw it last year at Worlds. There's just, LGD as a 4th seed, I don't think we're going to have a 4th seed that's weak from China. But you're not dodging the LPL when Worlds rolls around, which is really the scariest factor, that they're going to be in every single group. Now, there is that top 5. It doesn't end at FPX and JDG because there are even some better teams from the LPL. But we got to start with the new kids returning to the top 5. And okay, we talked about the disappointment, upset, you want to call it, for T1, even though they were the lower seed. But let's put some respect on them. Gen G absolutely showed up. We all forgot about them. BDD says, guys, I'm still one of the best mid laners the LCK's ever had.
As we talked about, going down the list of what mid laners we've had in the last couple of years in the LCK finals, it's the best of the very, very, very best in the world is what we get from this position. And that's how we can forget about someone like BDD when we're keeping track of Chovy, keeping track of Showmaker. Where's Faker? Oh, finally we're getting Faker. Oh, he's on Seraphine. What's going on? BDD's just laying there
quietly playing Syndra in his ear,
Now he's that crocodile just waiting in the water. You see the little air bubbles popping up. He's still there. He's still breathing, still waiting. And then, hey, you make that one step in the water, and there come the croc jaws of BDD and the rest of Gen G taking down T1. Yes, BDD absolutely deserves major praise, and especially for this type of high-profile showdown and matchup, and especially how he excelled. But again, I want to be putting some attention in that top section for Gen G because it gets so forgotten so many times when you have players like Ruler, when you've got BDD, what they're doing. But I think someone like Rascal and how the job that he's been able to provide, especially over the last 2 years, and the growth that he has made individually in that period for Gen G deserves to be recognized, as well as what Clid has done. Someone that I think has had, maybe some of the highs and lows of how the community has looked at him since leaving T1. And part of that is just maybe some pure jealousy of not having him on T1 still.
Yeah, and for Rascal, yeah, the past 2 years, he's been pretty consistently an all-pro top laner, not just a stable force who's, middling tier. He's been a top 3 top laner in the LCK now for multiple splits in a row. Problem Gen G still, we've seen internationally, that play it slow early game doesn't work against the G2s and LPL squads in the world, but it did work against T1. So EDG stays at number 4. RNG stays at number 1. They didn't even play this week. We're waiting until, the next couple of days. We're going to see both of them on the Rift. They have the luxury of being able to lose and get sent into losers bracket, but they're staying put. Top esports, yeah, they would have slid down if they lost to Suning, but and it wasn't the cleanest series. Like we said, there's that big throw in game 2. They need a Baron steal in game 1. Game 3 is one of the most disgusting stomps I have ever seen in a professional game. Let's just go through some of the stats here, Mark, because 7 minutes into the game, Karsa has 7 kills on Hecarim. At 15 minutes, it is a 12,000 gold lead. 12,000 at 15 minutes. And at 12 minutes, Jace, 369's Jace is level 10 to Bin's level 6 Camille, who has 38 CS at 12 minutes. What?
Dude, I've played solo queue games where my friend has spilt water on their keyboard and they still have more CS at that amount of time. What is going on in this game? You're right. The stomp of stomps from Top Esports and the pressure they were able to create. Got to be careful because in Karsa's own words, he was talking about game 1, saying, I didn't know teams could lose that type of way. And then he said, and then we played game 2 and we're like, what the hell? We lost.
But then to lose game 2 in that fashion and bounce back to have that game 3 performance is even more impressive.
Absolutely. And you love to see it from Top Esports. The fireworks, they were absolutely on full display from a squad like them. And knowing what we've got, not only, talking about in this top 5 of our power rankings, talking about the top 4 where you're at for the LPL playoffs, we're getting Jackie Love and Viper, the showdown guaranteed. Yeah. My man, LPL playoffs does not disappoint.
Yeah, I mean, Juan Fang and Jackie Love was already a show in its own right that we got to see in that series. And Damwon stays at number 2. I mean, 3-0 against Hanwha. You can say it was a close 3-0 if you want, but it's still a 3-0. They're staying put at number 2.
Absolutely. And the only hope for me, just from a competitive perspective, I hope that we get some type of competition, some actual challenge in the finals from Gen G, that they're able to once again, yes, I know that they were technically the higher seed type of situation against T1, but it really did feel the underdog stepping up to what
now
was
they're
the
really
momentum
underdogs.
T1. Absolutely. And they're going to need all that underdog good luck to make sure they're getting by the Damwon wrecking crew.
Yeah, and I'm hard pressed. It's crazy that after that impressive win against T1, pretty sure pretty much everyone is still going to be like, all right, Damwon to MSI. They're still not going to give Gen G any respect in this series.
That's what happens, though, when you've got a squad like Damwon that plays the way that they do. One of the things that I love that came out this week was Koma talking about his support Beryl and what he does and how much LEC action Beryl has been watching and getting inspired by seeing some of the support picks and some of the engages going on. And that, to me, is just the best.
Don't watch Fnatic.
Yeah, no, don't want to see too many of the Hylissang action going on, but someone like Beryl could cause some problems with Ghost. But I love to see that type of, information, that type of juicy thing coming out of seeing these other regions getting inspired by it. Someone like Beryl, that can bring some extra flash to Damwon squad.
Playoffs only going to get spicier, but that is it today for League Unlock. Eric and Mark here with you guys. Thanks for hanging. Catch you on the flippity flip.